recorder going. And there we go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Kabbalat Shabbat today. Some people who haven't been for a while, it's nice to see you all. We've got a better number today than the last couple of weeks. As you see, we're getting earlier and earlier. Next week, I'm just telling you now, it's going to be 5:15. So this week with 5:35. So it's jumping quite quickly now. Anyway, welcome. And without further ado, I am going to ask Leigh to open up with his Devar Torah.
Oh, I've just moved on my screen. Good evening, good Shabbos, everybody. We all know that we start reading the Torah on Shabbos Bereshis, and we finish reading it on Simchas Torah with the Sedra, where we actually read, not on a Shabbos, but we read the Sedra, the Zos HaBracha. There are, in fact, 54 Sidrot, and although there are only 52 weeks in the year generally, but the idea is because of a leap year and when Yom Tov falls, so it was decided, whoever the decision was made, the rabbis divided the Torah into 54 Sidrot. And each Sidra has its own specific Haftorah from the prophets. Some from Joshua, from Judges, Samuel, whatever. The exception is for Shabbos Shuvah, which varies in which Sedra it's attached to. Could be either Vayelech or it could be Ha'azinu. But that Haftorah comes from three different prophets. There's one paragraph from Hosea, one paragraph from Yoel, and one paragraph from Micah. That's the exception, but otherwise there are 53 Haftorahs in the whole of from the prophets. The most common of which come from Isaiah. Isaiah for the Shabbos Haftorahs, there are 14 of them throughout the year, which is more than anybody else, as I said. What is curious is that from the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av to next week's Haftorah, that's a run of 8 weeks, all of them come from the book of Isaiah. First one, the one before Tisha B'Av, comes from Isaiah chapter 1, the vision of Isaiah. And it's, as I say, just before Tisha B'Av. The other 7, starting from the Sedra Ve'es Chanun, which is the Haftorah is from Isaiah 14, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. And then going on through next one, all those 7 come from the book of Isaiah as well. And they're known as the 7 Haftorahs of consolation, where they deal with the effects of the destruction of the temple and how we should view it and everything else. Now, Isaiah, as interesting, not a great deal is known about him. They know he was married. They know he had 2 sons. And he lived at the time in the middle of the period of the first temple. So, and he started his prophesying in the year 739 or 740 or 739 BCE. How do we know that? Because chapter 6 of Isaiah talks about him starting his prophecies in the year that the king Hezekiah died, and that's 739 BCE. So that's when he started. And he prophesied all these kind of things for about 30 or 40 years. But he is living in the time of the middle period of when that first temple stood. So we know that the first temple was destroyed in 586 BCE, and it stood for 410 years. Therefore, it was built round about 1000 BCE. So by living in 740, that era, he's round about the middle period. And his prophecies are because of what he sees around him. He sees the Jewish people who, having got the land, having had the temple and everything going great, are walking away from Torah. They're not following those ideas anymore. And the more they wander away from those facts and those things, then the worse life becomes. Isaiah supposedly, as I said, starts to prophesy at the death of Hezekiah. It also, it seems, that about his death, he seems to have been actually killed either by a hit or whatever means by the person who succeeded Hezekiah, a guy called Manasseh, who was a really wicked guy. And at this time, all sorts of bad things were happening in Israel. And this is, remember, still the time when the temple stood. So we haven't had the problem with the Babylonians yet. We haven't had all those things happen. And he's talking about the idea of doing the right thing, to behave, to do things properly. Now, the book of Isaiah is 66 chapters. The first 39 are talking about life in pre-destruction of the temple. Chapters 40 to 55 talk about really the Babylonian captivity and what it feels like to be alive and free, but without the temple. And chapters 56 to 66 are talking about the return, what life will be like of the return. And that's how we always consider these Haftorah, in that they are the 7 Haftorahs of consolation. But they also happen to be the 7 Haftorahs before Rosh Hashanah. They're the 7 Haftorahs before we face a new year. So another way of looking at what Isaiah is writing about is how all these troubles because of the destruction and all that, actually we should be reviewing for ourselves as we approach Rosh Hashanah, to think what's wrong, how our lives are falling apart or going wrong because we're not following Torah ways, we're not doing the right thing, we've lost respect for other people, how we're not keeping kosher or keeping Shabbos, and all these things happening are causing and having an effect on Yiddishkeit today as it did then. So Isaiah, although he's writing a prophecy in a time where he is specifically talking about the destruction of the temple and the land, we can look upon it from where we're sitting as maybe a guideline to how we should be reviewing our lives, you know, how the past few years have treated us and all the rest of it, and how we should maybe change or try and improve things, not just for a better life for each of us, but for a better life for our families, a better life for our friends and our community, and a better life for B'nai Israel altogether. It really is something that's never, I don't think, ever been spoken about that way. I think it's an important time, specifically with the events that we know are going on in Israel and the surrounding countries. Maybe if we think very carefully, pray very hard, and come back on the path, things will improve, not just for us, but for B'nai Israel and for all the people in the Middle East. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Jakaya.
Very good, Lee. Yes, it's a lot to think about there. Thank you very much. Okay, now we come to Kabbalat Shabbat, and welcome to Stuart, who's going to lead that.